morning. How's everybody today? Great. It's a great day to be a Troy Trojan. And on behalf of Chancellor Jack Hawkins, I would like to welcome you all here today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm John Hartwell, Director of Athletics, and it is a very exciting day in Troy athletics and in particular Troy basketball history. Certainly, as we started this process a little bit unexpectedly 17 days ago, it was a Saturday night in Hot Springs right after the tournament, and Coach Don Maestri made his decision to retire. We have had a very rapid process over the course of the last 17 days, and the interest in our men's basketball position and program has been overwhelming. We have had so many folks inquire and be interested in the position. And as I reflected over this, there are really two reasons, I think, why that is. One, certainly this beautiful arena that we're standing in today that we're so proud of. And two, the foundation and groundwork that Coach Don Maestri and his staff have laid over the last 31 years. And I would be totally remiss if I did not send out a huge appreciation to Don and his staff for the work that they've done, because certainly they are synonymous with Troy basketball. But as we move forward into a new era, a new chapter of Troy basketball, we are very, very excited. As we started the process, there were several characteristics that we laid out, and I visited at length with Dr. Hawkins about that we wanted in our next basketball coach. First of all, a winner, somebody who has experience winning at a very high level. The gentleman that I'm going to introduce here in a few minutes, 11 of the last 13 years that he has been involved at the highest level of collegiate basketball, the teams he has coached have advanced to postseason. Outstanding track record. Certainly a person of character and integrity. While winning is very important to us, winning the right way is even more important. We want somebody who is going to do it the right way, who is going to graduate young men, who is going to follow the NCAA compliance rules. We want somebody that certainly at the end of the game on that scoreboard, Troy has more points than our opposition, but we also want somebody who outside of this arena represents us well. And certainly, as I have talked over the last 2 weeks with so many folks involved in collegiate basketball and higher education, when you mention this man, you get nothing but integrity, hard work, a guy of character, and certainly that is a very important characteristic to us. A relentless recruiter. Certainly, X's and O's are very important, whether it's basketball, softball, any game that we participate in, but you've got to have players. This guy has a track record. Dad was a legendary NAIA coach in the state of Kentucky. And last, but certainly not least, and I know I'm still relatively new to Troy, 6 months in now, but a fit for Troy. And as we looked at candidates who spanned, assistant coaches, head coaches from across the nation, certainly we wanted somebody who was going to come in and fit and be a part of the Troy family, because it truly is a family. And as I sat there this morning and listened to his initial address with our team at a 7 a.m. meeting this morning, and one of the first things he gets across very clearly to our team, and they all perked up when they heard this, he said, "We will not have any me in this group, it will be we." When you hear comments like that, that is exactly what Troy, not just Troy basketball, but the Troy family is about. None of us as individuals are any bigger or as big as Troy itself, and certainly that attitude of we, not me, will carry us a long way. So without further ado, I am very excited about the future of Troy basketball and it being in the hands of Coach Phil Cunningham.
Thank you. Thank you, John. It's a tremendous honor and a privilege for me to be named the new head men's basketball coach here at Troy University. And as I look out at this arena, it's unbelievable, and the detail that went into this and how nice this place is. And this just shows the kind of commitment there is to athletics, and in particular men's basketball and women's basketball here at Troy. And that's something that you can't put a price tag on. This facility is it's going to sell itself, and it's going to help so much. But again, it's an honor and a privilege to be here and to be named the new head coach here. And I want to thank everybody who's in attendance today. I appreciate you all being here and in support. And I want to thank some people individually. I had a chance yesterday. John and I drove down to Panama City to meet with Dr. Hawkins and his wife, and they were tremendous. They opened up their home to us, and we had a great visit with them. John and Dr. Hawkins they did a conference call for about an hour with the Sun Belt Conference, and Miss Hawkins, she took care of me, and we had a great visit there. But they were tremendous and really welcoming. And the thing that stood out to me about Dr. Hawkins above all else, and he was extremely impressive, just as John said he would be, but the thing that stood out above all else was he is obviously a man of high character. And with what he talked about and the things that he addressed me with specifically, it just showed me he's all about high character and integrity. And he never mentioned one word about winning. He never talked about winning. But what he talked about, and he really hammered his home, was he talked about work ethic. He talked about his background growing up, where he came from, and he really stressed the importance of work ethic. And he said, and obviously I'm coming in from the outside, so I don't know it. I haven't seen it. I've just been hearing about it. But he talked about how at this university that's a widespread quality of this university, that everybody here, they're not looking for somebody else to do it. We're going to do it ourselves, and we're going to roll up our sleeves and go to work. And when you talk about work ethic and you talk about it in that sense, then you don't have to talk about winning, because if you'll go to work like that and work like he's talking about, then winning will come, because you can't succeed in anything if you don't go to work. So that was very, very impressive with him. I've met with John. We started meeting. We've been communicating since this job came open. But my relationship with John Hartwell, it goes back a long way. We were together at Georgia State University. It's probably been 16, 17 years ago, and we formed a friendship there. But the thing that stood out about John back then, he was the associate athletic director, and he was in charge of the business. And the thing that stood about him, number one, very, very intelligent, a high level of intelligence for working in athletics. And, we're just a bunch of old coaches sometimes, but John is a highly intelligent, well-educated guy, and he was extremely efficient. He handled our business, and if you know anything about Coach Drizel, Lefty Drizel, who we worked for there, he was hard to deal with from a business standpoint. But John was efficient. When he said something, you knew it was going to be true, and it stayed with me. It was a lasting effect on me that he was dependable and that he was sharp. And when he and Heather came here, when they came here back in the fall, and I knew great things were going to happen at Troy. And you've got the right man, because he's all about the combination of academics and winning. Winning in the classroom and on the court, or on the field, or on the baseball diamond, or on the court, wherever it may be. He's about winning, but he's about academics and about graduating guys too, and that comes from his background, his educational background, and where he played and everything. But when he went to Ole Miss, I watched him. I was at Mississippi State. He went to Ole Miss, and we were both there for a long time. But I watched him progress from, went there as an assistant athletic director to, by the time he left, he was Pete Boone's right-hand man. I mean, nothing was going on at Ole Miss without going through, Mr. John Hartwell, and that was impressive just for me to see that. So when he came to Troy, and when this opportunity presented itself, it was a no-brainer for me to have an opportunity to work, with John again. And Heather's been a great host as well since I've come here. But I'm just really excited about that. Talking about Troy University, I think the thing that stands out when I started doing some research about Troy is the foundation of this university, the roots of this university were as a teacher's college. And when I think about a teacher, I think about somebody who wants to help others. And that's what teachers do. Teachers don't teach for money. They don't teach for glory, for fame. The teachers teach because they want to help people. And as John alluded to earlier, I come from a family of teachers and coaches. They've all been high school teachers, middle school teachers, small college coaches and teachers. So I appreciate, the fact that this university, the roots of this university, comes from a background of teach. Started as a teacher's college, and I think that probably as I meet people around this university, sort of in line with John said about what we talked about the team this morning, is people seem to be about helping others here and about moving forward together, and that struck me about Troy. The other thing that I know there's always been a really solid athletic tradition here, spread out through a lot of different sports. A lot of sports have succeeded here, and if you look back over the last 20 years, and I remember when Troy was Division II, and then he made the move into Division I. When I was at Georgia State, Troy was a part of the Transamerica, made that move to the Atlantic Sun, eventually made that move to the Sun Belt. So if you want to look, if you're a college administrator, if you're in a situation where you're trying to make that transition upward in NCAA athletics, you come to Troy to see. Troy wrote the book on how to move upward, but yet still succeed. You look at the championships that have been won here, the way they've consistently competed. They again wrote the book on how to do it, and that says a lot about the university. It says a lot about the fan base and the tradition here. The thing that specifically from a basketball standpoint that I remember, when I was at Georgia State with Coach Rozelle, we were part of the Transamerica. And if you all remember those days in the Transamerica, there weren't a whole lot of atmospheres that we would go to on the road that we would really be concerned about the atmosphere, the student body, the crowd really having an impact on the game. But there was one place, and when I was there 3 years, there was one place that we played that you knew when you went there that it was going to be a challenge because of the crowd, because of the enthusiasm of the crowd. They're going to be on top of you. And you all know what I'm getting ready to say, but it was Sartain Hall. And as an opponent, as a coach coming in there with Georgia State, we got excited about it because when you want to play somewhere where there's an exciting atmosphere. And we always knew when we came to Sartain Hall that it was going to be that kind of atmosphere. And it always stuck with me because as a coach, when you're an assistant coach and you're moving up the ladder and you're always thinking about the opportunity to be head coach, Troy was always in the back of my mind because I'm sort of a small town guy and grew up that way, and I love the weather in the South and all those things, but it always struck in my mind about Sartain Hall and how tough a place it was to play. And I'll talk about Ben in a second, but when I asked Ben, I said, Ben, how many times did you lose in Sartain Hall? And he said he could count them on one hand, one or two hands, and I remember his team. So, but that shows where this place can go from a basketball standpoint, and that was another drawing factor with me to this opportunity. I really felt it was a special opportunity in that sense. The next thing that comes to mind is it's really a privilege for me to be following Don Maestri. He's been a friend of mine. He's been more like probably a mentor in the sense that he's obviously older than me. But my lasting impression of Don Maestri started when we came to Sartain Hall. And we came, and I was working for Coach Rozelle. And in the coaching business, some of you all too young to remember Coach Lefty Rozelle, but he's one of the most famous coaches in college basketball history, one of the most successful, one of the most entertaining guys, and he's a larger-than-life figure. And when we came, wherever we went on the road, at the time as a Transamerican, he really drew a lot of attention. And the thing that really stands out about me to Coach Maestri was when I came in here, and I'm just a young assistant at Georgia State, and just happy to be competing and having a job, and happy to be working with Coach Rozelle. Coach Maestri treated me just like he treated Coach Rozelle. He didn't treat me any differently than he treated Coach Rozelle. And I think, as I got to know him over the years, just from a distance, from a competitive standpoint, and seeing him out there, I think it's the way he treated everybody. And if I had one quality as a person that I'd like to have, and I'd like to think that my family helped me become, would be, humility. And that's what Don Maestri is as humble as it gets. It's very successful. Had a great program here. You always knew when you played Troy it was going to be a dogfight. They were always going to be competitive. They were always going to be really good offensively. They were going to play hard. They were going to be together, all those things. And I have great respect for what Coach Maestri did here. And he called me this morning. He called me about an hour and a half ago. And just to tell you, we're friends. I had his number, plugged in my phone. And when I saw it and I answered it, and man, I can't tell you how much it meant to me for him to pick up the phone and call me, and was so welcoming in his in what he had to say to me, and he and I are going to get together soon. And I told him this on the phone. I told him I want him to be a part of this. I've read some of his comments. I know he's maybe planning on living in Troy, and I want he and his wife and his family to still be a part of Troy, and they're going to have an open invitation, to be here anytime from us. And I will consider him a mentor. I want to sit down and talk to him about, how he thinks it's best to be successful at Troy. So I feel honored to be following Coach Maestri and Coach Felix. I've known him forever, and those guys were an unbelievable tag team connection. So I have a lot of respect for those guys and what they did here. And in line with that, there's a young man in here today who we're definitely going to hire, and Ben Fletcher. You all know Ben, and yeah, give him a hand. He's from day one, when I started talking to John about this job, and we immediately moved to, well, who would you hire, and John was so aggressive about Ben, and I trust John. John played college basketball, was a starter at the Citadel for 3 years. He understands basketball, and he understands football too, because he was in the SEC at Ole Miss, so he understands it all. But he's got a great feel as an athletic director for basketball, and he sold me on Ben. I knew Ben as a player and knowing him as an assistant coach and seeing him out there and competing against him. But John immediately sold him, and then I can tell you, I've talked to so many people, and whenever the name Ben Fletcher comes up, it's, we got to have Ben. I hope you're keeping Ben. And Ben is, I told the team today, we talked, and we had a meeting, and Ben got them all there on time, and they were in there, and the thing that we talked about, and I explained to him about Ben. I said, Ben is a product of this program. Ben is a product of this university. I said, Ben is a guy who when you get your degree, you want to be like Ben. You want to be like this guy. He's got a great job. He's done a great job. People respect him. They like him. But I said, even on top of that, I said, use an example. I said, if the science department if they were having a meeting today amongst all the professors, then Ben could probably walk right up in that meeting and handle himself just as well with those guys as he could in a locker room. And I think he's a great example, and we're proud to have him. And we're going to put him on the road and get him out there because he knows how to sell Troy. He's lived it. He's lived it. He's been a big part of it, and we're really glad to have Ben on board. Moving forward, as we look to how to move forward, the one thing that as an assistant coach, I've always said, the one thing that, man, you better be good at is you better be good at recruiting. You better understand recruiting. You better understand how to work hard, how to work smart. And I've been really blessed to work for some great guys. I've worked for 5 or 6 different head coaches, but the two that stand out in terms of recruiting, I worked for Coach Drizel, Charles Lefty Drizel, at James Madison, 2 years at James Madison, and 3 years at Georgia State, and I worked for Coach Stansberry at Mississippi State for 12 years. And those two guys, from a recruiting standpoint, they're two of the best that ever were in this business. Ironically, part of Coach Maestri's, our conversation this morning, he was telling me a good story about Coach Drizel, and he brought out that point. He said you were so fortunate to work for Coach Drizel for so long, and I was, and he taught me so much. And Coach Stansberry, from a recruiting standpoint, those two guys are the best. They could walk in this room and sell you guys, they'd sell you some oceanfront property and out in the desert, like whatever that song says. But they were good, and I learned so much from them. And that's what we have to do here. We have to really hit the ground hard recruiting. Recruiting is the lifeline of any program. It's all about we've got to have good players. It's you can look back, and you've had Coach Maestri for 31 years. So the guys who've been here, you can say, when he had better players, he was a better coach, and that's normally, that's how it works. And we've got to go out there and hit the ground and we've got to work in the area of recruiting. We've got to be good at recruiting. We've got to get good players in here. We've got to get guys who want to graduate, because that's going to be our first goal for them when they walk in here. Number one goal, told the guys this morning, is get your degree. So they've got to have that about them, and then they've got to want to be the best basketball player they can be. So we've got to go out there and hit the pavement running on getting players. From a basketball standpoint, the catchphrase that I'm going to have with the players that they're going to hear a lot from me is in the areas that we can control, we have to have an effort level that's just off the chart. It's got to be, my thing is it's got to be 10 for 10, because you can look at, okay, if our effort level is 5 for 10, we're not going to get it done like we need to get it done. If our effort level is 7 for 10, 8 for 10, it's not going to cut it. We've got to be 10 for 10 on our effort level wherever there's any kind of area that we can have a control. And recruiting, right off the bat, recruiting is effort. I mean, there's 24 hours a day, and however many we've got to work at recruiting to get the best players in here, we've got to do it. Workouts, practice, all those things. Our effort level has to be 10 for 10 on everything. Because I'm not going to be the best coach in this league. I'm not going to be the smartest coach. I'm obviously not going to be the most experienced coach. We may not have the most talented team. All those things. But from an effort level, we control how hard we play. We control how aggressive we are. We control how hard we work in the off season. We control as coaches how hard we work to prepare for the opponent. All those things. And our effort level and everything we do has to be 10 for 10. And that starts with academics, starts with going to class, study hall, moving toward that degree, and it trickles all the way down to everything we'll do in basketball. And the one commitment, the promise I'll make to you as a university and a fan base is our effort level is going to be there. You don't ever have to worry about that with our effort level. It's going to be 10 for 10 at all times. The one thing from a basketball standpoint, from a style standpoint, I'm like everybody else. I love up-tempo basketball. I'm a man-to-man defensive type guy, but more than anything, I think what you will see from our team are three things. I think you're going to see togetherness. I go back again to Coach Maestri and his humility, and that's the kind of coach I want to be. I want it to be about the players. I want it to be about the university. I don't ever want it to be about me, and I don't ever want the players to think it's about them individually. It's about the team, and we've got to coach that and teach that and sell that every day with our team. That it's not about you, it's about the team, and we're going to be together. We're going to be together offensively, defensively. Our team is going to be together. I can assure you that, because there's nothing in this world I hate more than arrogance and selfishness. I want us to be a selfless team. Secondly, I want us to be competitive. Everything we do in practice and the way we prepare it's going to be a competition. Like John was alluding to the scoreboard. There's a reason there's a scoreboard up there that says, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And I want everything we do, starting with our workouts today, there's going to be a winner and loser in everything. Because I think the more that these guys can be, I want to beat you at whatever, if we're doing a drill or whatever we're doing, if I want to win, we've got to develop that mentality that I want to win whatever we're doing. And that'll carry over off the court as well. But we're going to be competitive. We're going to play hard. We're going to play physical. We're going to be mentally tough, physically tough, but we're going to be competitive. And I think you'll see those two things. And the other thing from a basketball standpoint is I hope our teams are going to be really skilled. I think there's some teams out there who have really done a great job in skill development, and we want to do that. And that's a more different type of area of subject, but different type of area of talking about basketball and everything. But skill development is huge to me. John talked about Arnett Moultrie. He's the guy that we worked out every day after practice. Every day he wanted to work out because he wanted to improve his jump shot. And if it takes all of us working every day, staying after practice for an hour doing that, we're going to do it because we're all about helping them get that skill development. But I just want to close up and again say, I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate John and Heather. I appreciate Dr. and Ms. Hawkins and the committee. I didn't mention the committee. John had an advisory committee. I've seen some of those guys here today. They were tremendous. The one thing that stood out about the committee as a whole was they were all about Troy. I've sat in on different situations where people had personal agendas. These guys had no personal agenda. They wanted what was best for Troy, and it was so evident in everything they said, in every question they asked. it was about what's best for Troy. And I really appreciated that because, again, it goes back to I want the main theme of our team to be togetherness and selflessness. And I saw that clear cut from that advisory committee, and I appreciate them being here. But again, I appreciate you all being here. I'm truly excited about this opportunity, and Ben and I need to get to work and hit the road here real soon. So thank you for coming out. We're going to do that separately, or you want to? Oh, okay. I've been involved in some opportunities. I'm one of those guys, I told John, I told the committee, I've never been one of those guys to really chase jobs every time a job comes open. I think John made a great point. And the older I got and the more I was in this business, I saw it. It's all about a fit. You know, if you're working for Tom Izzo or Rick Pitino, those guys they'll go get jobs anywhere. But otherwise, for the rest of us in this business, it's all about being the right fit and the right opportunity. And this is a great fit for me because of the comparison John used at Mississippi State and Starkville is very similar to Troy, you know, Mississippi State and SEC to Troy and the Sun Belt.
It was, I guess it was almost 2 weeks ago. I mean, certainly they were in the middle of play. You know, we lose on a Saturday night. Don talks to the team. They go on and win Sunday and Monday. And, you know, Phil and I have had a relationship for a long time. In fact, it's ironic because he had heard about the arena, and when Western came here back in December, he goes, wow, I've heard all about this arena. I want to walk through it. You know, little did we know, time and place and circumstance, you know, 3 months later, you know, how things would work out. But certainly through 16 years, and, you know, I had a couple of people ask me last night when all this started kind of breaking, I'd get a couple of texts and say, how in the world could a guy that spent 9 years at Ole Miss hire a Mississippi State guy for 12 years? But, you know, certainly as Phil and I went through that relationship, and, you know, we used to joke, would say, well, hey, we can meet in Tupelo or something for lunch, because you talk about a bitter rivalry between Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
There's hope for world peace. If Ole Miss guy can hire a Mississippi State guy, there's hope.
But certainly our friendship, you know, trumped that competitive nature there. So, you know, it just worked out very well. Between people inquiring about the, you know, and you get things from a whole host of varieties, and to that point, we opted early in the process not to use a search firm. I know a lot of folks today, it's kind of in vogue to use a search firm. And as I visited with Dr. Hawkins, I said, you know, I'm very fortunate in my background in collegiate basketball and having 3 or 4 very close confidants who are well respected in the business, who I trust. You know, I could vet through candidates with them with total confidentiality, that it made sense for us not to use a search firm. I mean, again, at the end of the day, you're spending $75,000, $100,000, $125,000 for a search firm that, in my opinion, part of your job as an athletic director is to know, hey, when you have a vacancy, how to vet through candidates. So I had a very close, tight-knit group of confidants, if you will. But we had, you know, agents who would call me and say, hey, I've got these 3 or 4 guys. You know, quite a few people reached out themselves individually. The timing of college basketball coaching changes is a little strange, because obviously you've got jobs that come open, but you've got a lot of people still playing, whether it's in the NCAA or the NIT or the ABC or however many of those other 12 tournaments they've got now. But certainly vetting through those candidates, about 75, and we had we had current Division I head coaches. We had people who used to be Division I head coaches. We had some regional folks, within the state of Alabama and the Southeast who may have been coaching at a lower level. But we had some very, very qualified candidates. And again, going back to that list of 5 qualities, as we vetted through it, and Dr. Hawkins and I were back and forth, and certainly our advisory committee, I want to thank them too, because they were outstanding for us. At the end of the day, when you got through looking at those 5 qualities, Phil Cunningham was head and shoulders above the rest, and certainly not that we needed this validation, but as I sat in there for 45 minutes this morning and listened to him address our team and the response that I could see in those guys' eyes, I have no doubt it was the right decision, and certainly at least for another 9 months, he's going to be undefeated. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I think there's some things that stand out about if you look at the current roster and the guys who played in this program, I think if you were from the outside looking in at Troy basketball, that they were always really good offensively, knew how to score, and Coach Maestri had a special gift. And I think, and sometime I'll meet some of you guys and talk to you, but very similar situation. My father he's passed away now, but he was the coach for 25 years at the same NAIA school in a very similar situation. But they were so alike in the sense that they gave their players freedom offensively, and when you played Troy, you knew, man, they were going to score some points. I don't care how good defensively you were, and you just look at the track record through the years. And a huge part of that was he implemented that mindset that, hey, go play. Don't worry about, if you miss shots, go hit the next one. And so I like the fact that that's already in place, because I have a similar philosophy in terms I want the guys to be free. I want them to be able to go play. But as we move forward, and we'll see how the roster develops over the next couple of months. But as we move forward, then I think our challenge is we've got to try to maybe bring in some big guys. I'm a firm believer in you've got to be able to score in the paint. Every coach I've worked for, from Coach Williams at Mississippi State to Coach Drizel all those years, Coach Stansberry, Coach Harper at Western Kentucky, I had the benefit of working a year with him, and it was an awesome year because he's one of the best coaches in the month of March you'll ever see. He's good all other time too, but he's unbelievable in March. And all those guys, were the same. Is we've got to be able to score in the paint, and I think that's the challenge that we have to do. We've got to go out and recruit some guys who can score in the paint, because when that game's on the line, you've got to be able to throw that ball to the paint and score. You've got to be able to have a guy that can score in there, and you've got to be able to have a guy that can draw some fouls. And I think moving forward, that's our biggest challenge in recruiting, is we've got to get, and it's hard. Ironically, that's the hardest thing to do too, because I'm not the only guy that thinks like that. Everybody thinks like that. And there's a lot more 6'2" guys out there than there are 6'8", 6'9" guys. But we've got to get out there and find, and find some big guys, because we're going to be a team that is going to throw that ball to the block some.
Sure, and certainly with a variety of folks that applied, and right from the get-go, I was not, or we were not caught up in somebody having necessarily Division I head coaching experience as much as it was looking at those intangible characteristics that they had. Hey, is this person a leader? What has this person done recruiting-wise? What have they done in player development? And certainly the fit, and I don't think you can, under-emphasize the correlations between Starkville, Mississippi, and competing in the SEC that you can with Troy, Alabama, and competing in the Sun Belt. And I don't look at this as a negative at all, but at Mississippi State and Starkville, you compare that budget to Florida and Kentucky, and there was still an expectation, and it came through what they did in Starkville. There was an expectation to win and to advance to postseason. No different than, you know, maybe basketball tradition and budget and everything else between Troy, Alabama, and Troy basketball as there is in Bowling Green and Western Kentucky basketball. And Phil and I have talked about that. Hey, I'm going to have the expectation. We may not have the very highest budget. We certainly are working towards improving those budgets and getting on a par with everybody else. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to have the expectation of us going out there and beating those folks. But you've got to be smart about how you do things. And certainly, and I like to use the analogy, you know, if we would have hired somebody who, you know, played at Michigan and coached at UCLA, and they come to Troy, I think they would have been totally lost. I don't know, you know, I don't care what your skill set is. You've got to have an understanding, and certainly I think recruiting in the Southeast is much different than it is in the Midwest or the West Coast, and obviously that experience, you look at the entire body of Phil's 20-plus years of recruiting and working, it has had a Southeast base.
John and I have talked about it. We want to move pretty quickly. I think I've definitely had some guys in mind. But Ben is a good example of the kind of guy we want to have on staff. I want to, you know, you don't necessarily have to be young like Ben, but you got to have a young spirit. I mean, and you've got to have a desire to really love being around young people and be excited about it and have enthusiasm. So I think when you look at our staff, you're gonna have some guys who are excited, and when they walk in the door every day, they're excited, and you're going to get the guys excited. One of the best things I ever learned after my first year working for Coach Drizel was we had we had these evaluations where he was obviously our superior, and he had the evaluation, and he told me, he said, Phil, he said one of the areas you've got to improve on, he says you got to get these guys more fired up. You've got a role to get these guys in practice every day fired up. And I said, Coach, man, it really shocked me. I said, Coach, I come to work every day, man. I'm the hardest working guy in here. I'm in here, his son Chuck. I said, Chuck and I are in here, you know, working our tails off. I said, I feel like the players should be that way as well. I said, it should be natural. They should want to come over here and go to work. And he's one of the best lessons he ever taught me, one of many. But he said, Phil, he said, they're not like that. He said, they're college kids. He said, they might come one day ready to practice. He said, next day they might be thinking about something that happened in the dorm last night. Maybe something happened at home. He said, they're just not like that. He said, some will. He said, you'll have some that will come like that. But he said, your role as a coach is you've got to motivate them every day. You know, you've got to make sure when they come on that court, they're ready to go. And so one of my things I always took from that point on, as an assistant coach, was I'm never going to have an off day. I may screw something up in a drill. I may forget what we're supposed to do. I may show a technique wrong, but I'm never going to have a day where I have an off day in terms of enthusiasm and effort and trying to get them going. And that's the way I've been around Ben 24 hours now. He's got that quality, and we're not going to bring anybody in on a staff who doesn't have that quality. We may not be the smartest guys, we might not be the best coaches, but we're going to be the hungriest, and we're going to be enthusiastic, and that's the kind of people I want to surround myself. I want to, again, I've taken so much from Coach Drizel, and that's the way he attacked everything, and I want to attack everything the same way, with just enthusiasm and excitement. And they need to see it in us every day. So I think, to answer your question, we're going to move quickly. I don't know how quickly we'll be able to get guys in, because if they're working somewhere, we've got to give them notice. But we want to definitely move quickly and get that type of staff in here.